The kettle screamed, and I grabbed the blue mug. Steam hit my face like wet cloth. My name is Daniel, and I am 31. Sunlight cut the sink into hard silver. Something in the hallway held its breath, hard. Lena moved behind me with soft, uneven steps. Her shampoo smelled citrusy and too clean. She reached for the cereal box with shaking fingers. The spoon on the counter clicked like a metronome. I felt a shift I could not name. "You okay?" I said, touching the cold counter. "Later," she said, staring at the fridge door. Her voice sounded thin under the humming light. The magnet with our photo slid a little. It felt like a quiet warning. With teeth, I set the mug down and watched the clock. The second hand ticked loud in the kitchen. Coffee smelled burnt and my tongue felt bitter. She rubbed her wrist and avoided the knives. The drawer handle looked like a polished threat. Her phone buzzed on the table and stopped. She flipped it face down with a quick breath. Blue light leaked around the cracked protective glass. I wiped the ring of water off the table. Silence swelled like smoke inside my chest. I grabbed my jacket and the scuff car keys. Metal chimed against the bowl and echoed. Cold air slid to the window gap slow. She tightened her robe belt and stared down. The tile under her feet looked unforgiving. "You sleeping okay?" I asked, lifting the keys. "Fine," she said, picking at a loose thread. The radiator hissed and the window fogged slightly. Her eyes held the sugar jar like a target. I waited for more and got nothing. I cracked 2 eggs into the scratch pan. The oil popped and the room smelled sharp. She pressed her palm to the cool marble. The fork on her plate stayed unused and lonely. Her breathing came small, like paper tearing. I tied the trash bag and heard plastic scrape. A crumpled receipt stuck to the rim and shone. I smelled citrus cleaner over the sour bin. She flinched when the lid thumped against metal. I saw fear pass like a shadowed bird. She walked to the bathroom with small measured steps. The door clicked and water began a thin hiss. Steam crawled under the light and fogged the mirror. Her hairbrush waited on the sink like evidence. I held the doorknob and then stepped back. I stared at my ring and felt the edge. Gold dug into skin while the faucet dripped. The calendar on the fridge showed unmarked squares. A dry marker lay uncapped beside a coupon. Days looked blank like a street before snow. A muffled cough rose behind the thin door. Water hammered the tub and then slowed. The bathroom smelled like soap and bleach drifting out. I touched the cool window pane and listened hard. My heartbeat stumbled, like shoes on wet stairs. She emerged pale and wrapped in a gray towel. The hallway bulb flickered once, then steadied. Moisture beaded on her collarbone and trembled. She reached for the hairdryer and missed. I smelled ozone and something faintly metallic. "You need a doctor," I said, stepping closer. "I'm just tired," she said, looking past me. The towel edge left lint on her wrist. I put the dryer back on the shelf. Her shoulders rose and fell like guarded gates. The laundry basket overflowed with a red sweater. A dark smear marked the sleeve like dried rust. Detergent smell floated sweet and heavy in air. I touched the fabric and felt gritty residue. She pulled it away and said it was nothing. "It's old paint," she said, eyes on the floor. "From when?" I said, keeping my voice even. The wall clock ticked twice and paused strangely. She shrugged and tucked hair behind one ear. The sweater slumped like a wounded animal. I slid my laptop into the canvas bag. The zipper rasped, and the strap cut my shoulder. Coffee cooled in the mug with a skin. She dabbed the counter with a damp napkin. A tremor ran through her hand like current. I stepped in for a hug and stopped. Her body felt rigid like a board. I smelled that citrus again under the steam. The clock cast a thin shadow across us. She turned her face, and I tasted dread. Outside, a truck groaned and rattled the mailbox. Metal clinked against the post and echoed. Morning light brightened the hallway and showed dust. I picked up a flyer from the doormat. Her gaze tracked it like a hunted thing. "I can stay home," I said, gauging her breathing. "Go to work," she said, reaching for the kettle. The kettle's body showed my warped reflection back. She set it down too hard on the burner. The thud sounded like a slammed door between us. Hard. I pocketed the keys and leaned on the table. What felt sticky from steam and spilled coffee. She wiped the circle clean with her sleeve. The kitchen light buzzed like a tired insect. Every small sound started to mean something else. "Please give me a moment," she said, voice low. She filled a glass and watched the bubbles climb. Condensation ran down to her knuckles like tears. The faucet dripped again and again like counting. I stepped back and felt the distance grow. An apron hung on a hook with flour dust. The kitchen smelled faintly of last night's bread. A mixing bowl sat near the window and cooled. She brushed crumbs into her palm and stared. She let them fall like tiny white stones. I considered calling my mom and put the phone down. The case felt heavy in my hand like lead. Notification dots glowed red against the black glass. A distant siren slid past and faded slowly. I wanted answers and got only thicker air. She picked up her purse and checked the zipper. Leather smelled warm and familiar under the light. She moved a lipstick and a folded tissue. The strap twisted and scraped against the chair. I hated the careful choreography of her hands. "Let's grab breakfast out," I said, forcing a smile. "Another time," she said, eyes on the salt shaker. The shaker left grit on her fingertips like sand. The radio clicked on and then off without music. She still would not meet me straight on, ever. Near the baseboard, a faint stain darkened the grout. The tile felt cold through my socks and unforgiving. Bleach hung in the air like a veil. She shifted to block my view of the mark. Her smile came late and broke like glass. I checked the time and missed my usual train. My watch strap pinched skin and left a line. The door frame smelled like fresh paint from spring. I held the knob and looked back at her. She stood very still like a statue under floodlights. I stepped outside and the cold slapped awake. The street seethed with bus brakes and diesel breath. Our mailbox clanged shut behind a passing carrier. From the kitchen window, her shape drifted like smoke. Something had started and it would not stop. Yet, traffic growled under the overpass and the wheel felt slick. Rain misted the windshield and the wipers ticked steady. The light ahead glared red through wet glass. My paper cup burned my palm while I waited, wired. A billboard flashed bright and threw white across the dash. The ad showed a smiling nurse under soft clouds. My coffee smelled bitter and sweet in cramped air. I tightened my grip on the keys. Too tight. I pulled into the lot and the gate arm lifted. The badge reader chirped and the green light blinked. Elevator doors met with a soft metallic kiss. I rubbed the leather strap on my bag. Hard. My desk lamp clicked and washpaper in yellow. The keyboard clacked fast while the monitor blinked awake. A cracked stapler leaned near a pen with teeth marks. The recycled air tasted dry and chemical, stale. A co-worker drifted by with a whiff of cologne. His shoes squeaked and he glanced at the clock. "You good?" he asked, leaning on my chair. "I'm fine," I said, moving the mouse without purpose. The printer whirred and pushed a warm sheet outward. The toner smell lifted as I counted bullet points. I stacked the paper beside a chipped ceramic turtle. My chest pounded hard against the chair back. Loud. I opened my inbox and watched the numbers throb. New messages popped like hail across the screen. A calendar invite flashed under the fluorescent hum. I swallowed air that tasted like dust, dry. The break room hissed with the espresso machine cycling. A paper packet tore and sugar hit the cup. I leaned against the fridge and felt cold steel. The humming vent pushed burnt coffee smell. Sharp. My manager stepped in with a folder and a nod. The overhead light bounced off his watch and dazzled. "Meeting at 10, he said, tapping the folder. "I'll be there," I said, gripping a plastic stirrer. I scrolled news and watched headlines shimmer and slide. A distant siren rose through the sealed window glass. My mouse wheel rasped under my finger like sand. I stared at the desktop photo of the pier. Empty. The meeting room crackled with the conference speaker testing. A cable snaked across the table like a vein. "Status," my manager said, drumming near the projector remote. "On schedule," I said, while my notes stayed blank. I left early for lunch and lied about an errand. The stairwell smelled like damp concrete and sweat. My shoulder scraped the rail where paint had bubbled. My breath echoed down the steps, hollow. The car interior held the morning's coffee smell. I touched the steering wheel and felt dried rain specks. Sun broke through clouds and shattered across the hood. I turned toward home with the blinker clicking. Insistent, the apartment door stuck and then gave with a sigh. Cool air drifted out with a trace of bleach. My shoes thumped the entry mat and shook dust. The hallway light pooled on the rug, thin. I followed a faint sweetness into the bedroom. Curtains breathed slow while gray light fingered the dresser. A denim jacket hung from the chair with weight. I brushed the pocket and felt paper. Folded. I slid the paper free and heard the soft crackle. The flyer's edge scratched my thumb and left a line. Fresh toner smell rose as the logo stared back. Women's care looked clean and kind, and wrong. I read the hours and a number under bold text. The layout shone under the bedside lamp's weak circle. I set the flyer on the nightstand beside a hair tie. Silence pressed against my ears. Harder now. In the bathroom, the mirror fogged around old streaks. The cabinet door tapped lightly against its frame. A small foil packet hid behind a travel toothbrush. My fingertips tingled at the slick crinkle, electric. The kitchen clock clicked once and then stood still. Light spread across the counter and found crumbs. A glass sat half full and warm to the touch. I smelled lemon cleaner and something faint. Copper. I called and listened to the ringtone climb and fall. Her voice answered thin against wind and traffic. "Where are you?" I said, staring at the salt shaker. "Out running errands," she said, breath catching. "What errands?" I asked, gripping the edge of the sink. "Groceries," she said, the word small and neat. The phone warmed my ear while the faucet dripped. "I'll be home soon," she said, and the line ended. I placed the flyer flat and smoothed the crease. Sunlight edged the paper and made the logo glow. I opened my laptop, and the fan spun hard. Search results crowded the screen, quietly shouting. The refrigerator kicked on and filled the room with hum. Magnets rattled, and a postcard tilted sideways. A fruit bowl sat heavy with 2 bruised apples. I closed the laptop and felt the table shake, slight. I folded the flyer again and slid it into my bag. The zipper rasped and caught on a frayed thread. My fingertips tingled as I tugged the metal pull. I left the apartment with the hallway light buzzing. Low. Back in the car, I watched the plane cut the clouds. Its engine droned and faded behind the office towers. My seatbelt chafed and held me like a hand. I gripped the shifter and swallowed hard. Twice. The office lobby smelled like flowers and floor wax. A janitor's cart rattled and a mop head dripped. I nodded and pressed the elevator button again. The arrow lit and waited like a steady eye. At my desk, I slid the bag into a drawer. The flyer touched the stapler and made a whisper. Cool air blew across my knuckles from the vent. I closed the drawer and kept my hand there. Thinking, the clock hands crawled while the fluorescent tube sizzled. Emails stacked and blinked under the taskbar's edge. My mouse cord tugged against a stack of invoices. I listened for my phone and heard only fans. Spinning. I stood and stretched and felt fabric bite my shoulders. A squeal rose from the hallway as a cart turned. The water cooler burbled and blinked with blue light. I filled a paper cup and tasted plastic thin. I typed notes and watched letters march in lines. The cursor pulsed bright, like a heartbeat against white. A sticky note clung to the monitor with fuzz. I wrote at noon and waited for noise. Nothing. I stepped to the window and pressed my forehead against glass. Street heat rose from blacktop, despite the rain earlier. A bus exhaled and a cyclist rang a bell. My reflection floated beside the skyline, pale. The afternoon dragged until the clock clicked to 5. I packed the folder and shut the lamp off. Shadows pulled around the desk and softened edges. The drawer stayed heavy with the flyer, quiet and loaded. My phone rattled on the desk and jumped. Unknown number flashed bright against the dark screen. I lifted it with sweaty fingers and answered fast. "Come now," a woman said, voice clipped, urgent. I stood so quick the chair scraped loud. My jacket hung heavy on the cubicle wall. A sour tang filled my mouth like pennies. I'm on my way, I said, grabbing the keys now. The elevator doors slid apart with a breath. Cold lobby air carried floor wax and lilies. I pushed through the revolving glass like a bull. The badge in my pocket dug sharp. Move. Rain needled the windshield and hissed. Wipers slapped a hard rhythm across the glass. My knuckles burned white on the steering wheel. A paper cup rattled in the holder, empty. The highway roared and swallowed my signal. Headlights smeared silver lines on the wet hood. The dashboard chimed and a red icon blinked. I tasted metal and pushed harder, faster. A horn blared and shook the frame. I swerved past a truck with a tarp. Spray hit the side window like gravel. The seatbelt scraped my neck, stinging. The hospital lot glowed under sodium light. Umbrellas bobbed between rows like drifting crows. My shoes slapped puddles and filled with cold. I followed the lit arrow toward the doors, hard. Inside, disinfectant burned my nose and throat. The automatic doors breathed and shut behind me. Reception buzzed under a blue clock face. A printer spat a sticker that stuck, visitor. Family only, the clerk said, pushing a clipboard. Her nails clicked on the laminated map softly. Her name, she asked, eyes flat under glare. I gave and felt my tongue stick, dry. Take elevator B, she said, pointing with a pen. A purple dot marked a hall beyond security. The turnstile beeped against my hip like a tap. I clipped the badge to my shirt. Crooked, elevator B chimed and opened on bright white. A cart rattled past stacked with blue drapes. A nurse brushed by and smelled like latex. Excuse me, I said, catching her sleeve, gently. She arrived. The nurse said, checking a tablet. Her thumb slid over glass and flash lines. Are you husband? She asked, eyes quick and cool. Yes, I said, and my throat tightened hard. Wait here, she said, and the door swallowed her. The corridor hummed with vents and distant beeps. A metal bench bit into my legs like teeth. I counted the tiles to keep steady, useless. A gurney squealed by with a shroud folded. The wheels clicked a seam and stuttered twice. I smelled iodine and something sharp behind it. A monitor pulsed green in the doorway, relentless. Sir, another nurse said, holding a clipboard. Her badge flashed under the ceiling lights. Any allergies? She asked, pen ready and waiting. None, I said, showing my ID shaking. Doctor needs a minute, she said, voice even. She pointed at a plastic chair near a plant. The leaves shone like wax under fluorescent wash. I sat and felt the seat flex thin. I texted one line and watched it sit. Delivered blinked blue and then went quiet. The phone warmed against my palm like bread. I waited for dots and got nothing. Blank. A door clicked and soft voices gathered. Words bled through like fog in low light. Labs now, someone said, and shoes scuffed hard. A metal tray clanged and went still. Cold. I stood and paced 3 lines of tile. Air tasted like bleach and old coffee. A trash can held crumpled gloves and wrappers. I wiped sweat off my lip. Salty. Sir, a nurse said, blocking a doorway. Her arms crossed tight above a stethoscope. You can't go in yet, she said, apologetic. I nodded and touched the wall. Cool. The hand sanitizer snapped and spat gel. Alcohol stunned my cracked knuckles like fire. A poster showed a diagram with bright arrows. I stared until the arrows blurred. Dizzy. The vending machine hummed near the elevator bank. A spiral held a single granola bar. I fed coins and listened to the clink. The bar dropped and thumped, hollow. I tore the wrapper and tasted cardboard sweetness. The lights flickered once like a shutter closing. A clock over the nurse's station crawled slow. Seconds dragged footprints across my nerves. Deep. The restroom smelled like lemon and cold tile. Water beat the sink and splashed my shirt. A paper towel rasped against my face. I watched the mirror fog and fade, ghostly. When I stepped out, a doctor waited. His coat rustled and a pen cap clicked. She is being evaluated, he said. Steady. Is she awake? I asked, feeling the badge bend. She asked for water, he said, hands clasped. He handed me a foam cup with ice. Chlorine drifted up and stung my tongue. You can't bring it yet, he added, soft. A stretcher rolled past and the curtain breathed. The curtain hook scraped metal like a whisper. I saw an 4-pole glide under white light. It vanished behind a sign with an arrow left. The overhead speaker crackled with a coded alert. Voices sharpened and then softened in waves. A rolling keyboard bumped my knee and squeaked. Sorry, an aide said, eyes fixed, busy. I pulled out my wallet for insurance cards. Plastic stuck together with a faint tack. I handed them over the counter edge. The scanner beeped like a quiet metronome. Steady. Sit tight, the clerk said, eyes on a screen. A blue cursor blinked in patient search fields. Printer heat rose and smelled faintly of dust. I took the papers and folded them small, careful. A child cried somewhere and then hiccuped. A teddy bear sagged from a stroller handle. The cry thinned to a whine and faded. The teddy's glassy eyes stared past me, still. Family for Lena, a nurse called, voice sharp. I stood so fast the chair legs screeched. She held a tablet and avoided my eyes. Follow me to consult room 2, she said now. The consult room hummed with a tiny vent. A metal table held a box of tissues. Overhead, lighting flattened every shadow to paper. I stood instead of sitting, waiting. A second doctor entered with a quiet nod. His shoes whispered on the vinyl floor. A silver watch flashed near a clip cuff. We need to move her upstairs, he said. Quick. Where? I asked. Fingers on the cold table. He glanced at the open chart without blinking. Obstetrics, he said, voice low and precise. The word hung in the bright air, heavy. The elevator lurched and the floor gripped my shoes. A red button glowed at my thumb like an ember. A gurney nudged my hip and rattled past fast. I tasted fear and watched numbers climb. Slow. The doors opened on bright letters over glass. Labor and delivery shone in silver against the wall. Soap stung the air and the handrail felt cold. I stepped forward and knew nothing. Yet, a nurse waved a small page in the hall. Hold this, she said, and pressed it into my palm. Its plastic shell warmed under the fluorescent wash. Wait in the blue chairs, she said there. The waiting alcove hummed under a mute television. A scrolling news ticker bled red across the screen. I smelled burnt coffee near a dented vending machine. A plastic fern cast a crooked shadow thin. Down the hall, a newborn cried like a siren. The sound cut through the white light hard. A mobile of stars turned above a bassinet. I clenched the pager and looked away. Fast. Fill these, another nurse said, sliding a clipboard. Her pen clicked and skittered across the table. Paper smelled like toner and fresh glue. I wrote my details and left a smudge dark. Through a half-open door, I heard low voices. Beta levels, someone said, and a monitor beeped. Gel bottles clinked inside a bin against metal. The word ultrasound floated and hung, heavy. I called and heard her voicemail rise and fall. The phone warmed my cheek under the ceiling glare. Call me, I said, watching a water fountain drip. My voice sounded borrowed to my ear, thin. The pager buzzed against my palm and jumped. A nurse in blue scrubs waved me closer. Disinfectant burned my nose like a match. Doctor will speak with you, she said. Now. He stepped from a side room with calm eyes. His coat whispered, and a clipboard rode his arm. We have complications, he said, voice smooth. My partner, I said, fist tight around the pager. She is stable, he said, and lifted a hand. We are managing bleeding with fluids and meds. Latex tugged at his wrist near the watch. We need more imaging, he said. Soon. I swallowed and looked at a wall clock. The second hand shivered against white enamel. A plastic trash can breathe with a slow flap. I tasted copper and nodded. Once. The vending machine took my coins without complaint. A ginger ale dropped and thudded in its coil. Cold fizz bit my tongue and throat. The bottle trembled against my teeth. Shaky. A cleaner pushed a yellow cart past the chairs. Pine scent drifted from a snapped spray bottle. She set a caution sign near a scuffed tile. Its black figure looked mid-fall, caught. A door cracked, and I saw her foot. Pale toes peeked from a sheet under light. and 4 bags swayed on a metal pole. A beeping thread stitched the air tight. "Sir," a nurse said, blocking the thin view. Her badge flashed and her sleeve brushed my wrist. "You can stand here," she said, pointing at tape. I planted my shoes and kept breathing, counting. A tech rolled an ultrasound cart into the room. Wheels squeaked and cables dragged along the vinyl. A wand rested in a metal cradle beside gel. The gel bottle glimmered like a river, cold. "Were you aware of pregnancy?" a nurse asked. She lifted a curtain edge and checked a line. "Not until today," I said, gripping the chair. Her face softened for a breath, then vanished. Another nurse brought a small zip bag. "Her earrings," she said, placing in my hand. Plastic crinkled and the studs tapped together. They felt heavy for their size. Odd. A bassinet rolled by trailing sweet powder. A knit cap bobbed under a soft blanket. The wheels clicked a seam and then paused. The contrast cut like glass, sharp. He returned with a tablet and a nod. "Results are clear," he said, eyes steady. His pen cap ticked against the tablet case. "This is a miscarriage," he said, quiet. The word jolted the air like a slap. A blood pressure cuff deflated with a sigh. A metal stool creaked under my weight. I gripped the edge until knuckles blanched. "White, we have options," he said, tamping down words. "Medication or procedure depending on bleeding." Alcohol pads lay stacked in a small tray. "We will advise after labs," he said. "Soon." "Can I see her?" I said, voice low. He tucked the pen and looked at the door. "Briefly," he said, and touched the chart spine. "Let's prepare the room," he said. "Please." I pressed the cold foam cup to my lip. Chlorine lifted and made my eyes sting. The drinking fountain whined under steady pressure. I filled the cup and kept it. Waiting, a consent form slid across the counter toward me. The paper caught on a stale cookie crumb. My signature dragged and skipped on the line. The pen left a groove that shone, silver. I texted my sister 3 words and stopped. The phone buzzed with a dull insect hum. A bench under the window pressed my back flat. I erased the message and stared. Hollow. A red cart rolled past with drawers latched. Rubber wheels whispered and a cable dangled. The air smelled like gloves and hot plastic. Somewhere a door slammed once, hard. A nurse set a pamphlet beside my knee. Understanding miscarriage glowed in sweet, rounded letters. The paper felt smooth and wrong under light. I closed it and left it face down, burning. "Ready," she said, and lifted the curtain corner. I stepped forward with the cup and the pager. White light spread across the polished floor. Her silhouette waited behind thin fabric. Still, she looked smaller under the harsh lamp. The curtain breathed behind me with a slow rasp. Antiseptic stung my nose and my eyes watered, and 4 pole gleamed beside the bed. I held the foam cup like a ticket. Waiting, her lips were cracked and her wristband dug in. The monitor kept a thin beeping that needled. Warm light pooled on the metal rail. A plastic cup sweated on the tray beside tissues. She would not look straight at me, only past. "Water," I said, lifting the straw toward her mouth. She turned her head and the pillow rasped. "No," she said, eyes on the drip chamber. The gel smell lingered from the cart near us. I set the cup on the tray and waited. Still. "I need to tell you something," she said, voice frayed. The fluorescent hum deepened like a storm building. She picked at the blanket seam with slow fingers. "It happened 2 weeks ago," she said. The words scratched through me like sand across glass. "I bled at home," she said, barely above a whisper. The bathroom smelled like iron and cold tile. I used the white towels and threw them away. The trash lid thumped and I had the bag. She gripped the call button until her knuckles blanched. Hard. "I didn't tell you," she said, fingers clutching the sheet. A light flickered over the cabinet and steadied. My ring pressed into my skin like a thorn. "Because it wasn't yours," she said, staring at nothing. The beeping flattened to a straight line in my head. "Who?" I said, hand tight on the bed rail. She swallowed, and the straw clicked against the cup. "Someone from work," she said, voice gone small. Disinfectant sharpened the air until my eyes watered. A tissue box sat between us like a barricade, square. I stood, and the chair legs scraped the floor. The visitor badge sagged from my collar like lead. "I'm sorry," she said, reaching without moving her hand. I set the badge on the tray and turned away. The hallway light stretched ahead like a tunnel, brutal. I hit the hallway, and the vents hissed. Bleach rode the air and burned my throat. Fluorescent light flattened the scuffed handrail to bone. The exit sign glowed red like a dare move. "Sir," a nurse said, stepping into my path. Her clipboard tapped my chest with a soft knock. "You should sit," she said, eyes steady under glare. "I can't," I said, fingers sliding off the rail. "Is she safe?" I said, voice dry and thin. The pen in her hand clicked once and stopped. "Stable for now," she said, shifting her stethoscope lightly. "We're admitting overnight," she said, "monitoring in meds." "Can I call someone for her?" I asked. The sanitizer pump snapped and alcohol stung the air. "There's a phone in the alcove," she said, pointing. A plastic chair waited in shadow like a trap. I sat and pulled my phone from my pocket. Blue light washed my hands and showed tremor. The keyboard thudded softly with each clumsy tap. "Please go to county now." I sent urgent. 3 dots rose and fell and vanished. The wall clock ticked and dragged the white room. A foam cup sweated on a low table. I stared at the doorway and couldn't stand, yet a doctor passed and his watch flashed silver. "Observation tonight," he said, pausing at the chart. "Antibiotics and fluids," he said, voice low. "She will not be alone," he said, firm. I tossed the foam cup into the bin. The liner crackled loud against the metal rim. Elevator chimes rang soft like distant bells. I pressed the down arrow and kept breathing, counting. The door side open and cold air spilled. Floor wax smelled sweet around a yellow sign. I pushed through the lobby toward the sliding glass. They parted on cue and exhaled bright light. Hard. Outside, rain ticked on the abandoned wheelchair. The parking ticket machine chirped and flashed green. My key fob clicked and echoed across wet concrete. I walked to the car and did not look back. Rain batters the windshield and the wheel twitches. Streetlights smear gold across the wet hood. The heater coughs and pushes air that smells dusty. I grip the shifter until my fingers ache. Hard. The lock sticks and the door opens with a groan. Cold hallway air tastes like old paint and damp. A floor lamp throws a weak cone over the rug. My keys clatter into the ceramic bowl, too loud. I kick off my shoes and hear water drip. The kitchen smells like lemon and stale coffee. A glass with a lipstick crescent sweats on the counter. Light from the stove clock blinks green. Urgent. On the console table, a receipt hangs half out. The paper rasps as I slide it free. Ink spells a hotel bar under harsh type. A room number sits lonely on the corner. Bold. A second slip falls and skates across wood. A plastic keycard glints under the lamp's yellow wash. Its edge bites my thumb and leaves a line. The logo catches and burns in my eyes, hot. The laptop wakes with fan's thin whine. Screen light washes the table and my hands. A message preview rises from a muted corner. An initial M glows beside a gray circle, waiting. I click and the chat opens with a snap. Stickers pop and fade under the white glare. A timestamp winks near a photo thumbnail. My heartbeat thuds against the chair back, louder. I open the photo and the room shrinks. A hoodie's shoulder fills a frame under neon. Her necklace shines against fabric I do not know. The bars tap, tower gleams behind them, cold. I call and the ringtone climbs and stalls. She answers over a hallway echo and hush. "Where are you?" I ask, staring at the fridge magnet. "I'm still here," she says, breath catching on the line. "I found something," I say, fingers on the trackpad. "What?" she asks, voice brittle in the static. "A photo with an initial," I say, eyes burning. "Please don't," she says, whispering past someone nearby. "Tell me who?" I say, palm flat on the table. "Not on the phone," she says, moving the handset. A distant cart squeals and swallows her words. "I will call back," she says, then the line dies. The apartment hums and the lamp flickers once. Rain ticks the window and beads on the glass. The key card waits beside the laptop like a blade. I set it pocket side and stare at the door, ready. I shove the key card into my pocket and go. The stairwell smells like damp cement and old dust. Streetlight glare washes the windshield in streak gold. The engine growls as I aim for the hotel. Hard. Neon washes the lobby in bruised purple light. The bar smells like beer and lemon cleaner. Stools line the rail, and a menu curls upward. Glasses hang upside down and chime softly. Tiny bells. I step to the bar and set the receipt down. Ice rattles in a shaker behind polished taps. Is Mark here? I ask, keeping my voice even. The bartender wipes a glass and squints, measured. He studies the receipt under the pendant glow. Paper edges rasp while he turns it once. You mean Mark who runs nights, he says, shrugging. He's in back, he says, tapping the bell twice. I slide the key card onto the lacquered wood. Its plastic feels cold and slick under sweat. The scratched logo catches light like a blade. The bartender's eyebrows lift as he whistles, low. Wait here, he says, tucking the car behind bottles. The dishwasher hums and steam curls near steel. A lemon wedge dries beside a salt shaker. Fried onions drift from the kitchen and twist, thick. I stand by a high top and touch a coaster. The cork edge bites like grit into my thumb. A TV blares highlights and throws silver flashes. The hoodie in the photo throbs in memory. Closer. A waitress glides past and her tray clinks. Condensation trails down a pint and pools. Looking for someone, she asks, tilting her chin. Mark. I say, eyes on the swinging door. The door bangs and a shadow slides across chrome. Footsteps scrape and then stop by the taps. A man steps out and blinks at the light. His hoodie matches the photo under neon. Exact. He steps closer and wipes his palms on denim. The bar smells like lime wedges and spilled beer. Light from the taps bends across the counter steel. I set the key card flat between us. Sharp. You knew. I say, voice tight as wire. His glass trembles and clinks against the mat. I knew, he says, not lifting his eyes. The word drops heavy and doesn't move, ever. Did you want her? I ask, hand curling. Music thuds low through the floor like a drum. I wanted her then, he says, dragging breath. I don't now, he adds, face pale. I push the card toward him and wait. Its edge scrapes wood and stops at his hand. He stares at it like a wound reopened. The pendant bulb swings above us, slow. Stay gone, I say, knuckles white on the rail. His shoulders fold like paper under rain. The smell of bleach rises from the bar rag. He nods once and backs into shadow, silent. I pocket the card and head for the door. Cold air hits, sharp as broken glass. Rain hammers the awning and splashes my shoes. The lock glows under red neon, bleeding.